Good afternoon, everyone. Caresoft Technology would like to welcome you to our Cloudflare webinar, Future-Proofing Your Networks from DDoS with Cloudflare. At this time, I would like to introduce our speakers for today, Tony Deleza, Senior Manager of Solutions Engineering at Cloudflare, and our moderator, Derek Gilmore, Senior Strategic Solutions Engineer at Cloudflare. Tony, I'll pass it on to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Anna. Yeah, just to quickly introduce, myself, I'm Tony Deleza. Derek Gilmore's with me. We both work within the solutions engineering team here at Cloudflare that's focused on government and education. So we work with a lot of states, local governments, city, counties, and education, both K through 12 and higher education. But we're excited to sit down today and talk a little bit about future-proofing your networks from DDoS with Cloudflare. So before I get started, maybe Derek, does that look good? You can see it okay?
Yep, good to go.
All right, let's jump right into it. And I'll apologize because I'm fighting a cold and hopefully you can't tell, but if you can, just bear with me on that piece of it. Let me take a second just to give you a quick background on Cloudflare. So when Cloudflare was founded, we were founded with this mission that really every employee embraces around how do we help build a better internet. And that might be from providing our services for free to protect things like election sites, to ensure things like secure and open elections. It could also be our team, working with the internet as a whole to build new standards for things like post-quantum crypto or encrypted client hello. But I think having such a big, ambitious mission has really forced us to build what I would call a big and ambitious network. And so when people ask me, what is Cloudflare? It is a massive, globally distributed network. And there's a couple pretty, I'd say techie bits of it that I want to share with you that I think are really important to, make us stand out when you're thinking about solutions. So first and foremost, we operate and own everything that we have deployed. So we aren't really building on top of public cloud providers. Rather, what we do is we take commodity, routers, server switches, and we deploy them into colocation space all around the globe. What that does is it lets us stay really nimble and agile, and especially as it pertains to today, when we think about threats and bad actors, we're able to very quickly pivot and make changes and iterate on our security services to better protect our customers. Every single point of presence we have around the globe, one of the things that we require is that it's able to run our full suite of services. What that means is you see all these little dots on the map. I'm not going to come to you today and say, let me tell you how we're best in class in DDoS. And then, DDoS is only facilitated from 5 or 6 of these locations. Every location provides DDoS protection. It can serve your DNS. It can provide a WAF. There's really a plethora of solutions Cloudflare has, but everything runs everywhere. And the last point I'll make quickly here is it's built as an anycast network. For now, I'm going to leave it as we're going to always take action as close to the source as possible. So simple example, bad actor in London decides they want to attack your, let's say, IP space. We can stop that attack in London. We don't have to let the traffic backhaul to your physical network or your ISP or even into the US if it's a out-of-country attacker like that example I just gave. So this big network, an ambitious mission we have. The other piece I think that's really critical to just talk about is the fact that we see 20% of the internet. So 1 in every 5 websites on the internet today operate behind Cloudflare. That gives us a massive sample size to understand what does traffic on the internet look like today. And so a lot of that data is going to help inform a little bit about what we talk about over the next little bit of time here. So I figure probably what's most beneficial is before we talk about how we can help, what's the latest in the world of DDoS, what's happening out there. And just to level set, I'm sure everyone on the call has heard of DDoS or feels comfortable with what it means. But simply put, is if a bad actor were to intentionally try to overwhelm either like a single resource you have, think of VPN gateway or your DNS, or they might just be trying to saturate your network. Maybe they're targeting a bunch of IPs, a bunch of ports, and they're trying to overwhelm your network with traffic so that users can't access a service, whether from the outside or the inside. So these DDoS attacks, they can come in a lot of different forms and fashions, but at the end of the day, the goal is to disrupt work or bring down services for your organization. And especially if we look at it from a perspective of 2025, it's dirt cheap to launch a DDoS attack, and you can do it from just about anywhere. I mean, there's so many different options. You can imagine someone with little to no knowledge could go to a search engine to find out. They could ask AI now to find out, and get pointed to a tool where they could, swipe a credit card, maybe spend $5, and now they've launched an attack that could have a significant impact on an organization. So long gone are the days where you need to have I'd say a deep technical, knowledge or background to facilitate one of these. Anyway, stepping forward from that, again, this 20% of the internet, one thing I like, and I think again back to that building a better internet, is we try to make this information accessible to everyone on the web. So there's a website, radar.cloudflare.com. Feel free to go out to it if you want to right now. You don't have to sign up for an account. You don't have to, provide any information, but it's us trying to peel back a little bit of the covers or the layers on that 20% of the internet view. So you can see on the left-hand side here how I could get an idea around like what security and attacks are Cloudflare seeing? Are there internet outages? I want to, take a look at, IPs and what Cloudflare knows about them. But under this report section, one of the things we do each and every quarter is we publish a threat report specific to DDoS. So this past quarter, we published one as our 22nd iteration of that report. And in it, there's lots of really good details. I typically do a webinar and or like in-person presentation around anatomy of a DDoS attack, and we'll dig into specific attack vectors. We'll dig into ways you can protect yourself even outside of using Cloudflare. For the sake of time today, I'm not going to get into that level of depth, but I just encourage you as maybe a after the webinar type of exercise, if you have some time, go take a look at it, because there's some really good information that's pertinent to what's going on right now. And every quarter we'll continue to release those. But there is one trend I think that's worth highlighting. And so that's the one I want to focus on in the conversation today, because I really think it helps drive a narrative and a thought process around are the things we're doing to protect from DDoS, are they sufficient enough with the modern internet as it is today? And one of the big things I'd like to call out is hyper-volumetric DDoS attacks. And if you haven't heard that phrase, there's two very specific quantifying characteristics that exist to paint the picture for one of these attacks. Number one, it has to be over 1 terabit per second of capacity in the attack. Number two, there has to be over 1 billion packets per second in the attack. So both of those things have to be true. These were, I started Cloudflare 5 years ago. I would say these were close to non-existent at that point in time. And as you'll see in the story, right, that's completely changed. They're becoming more and more prominent. Probably the best example I can give is the largest DDoS attack in history. It just happened back in mid-May, and we blocked a 7.3 terabit per second attack, which that amount of traffic is mind-numbing. It's a lot, but I think the piece that's I keep getting drawn back to, and it's just a very common thing with DDoS attacks, is this down here in the bottom corner. Only lasted 45 seconds. Why do I feel like that's impactful? Well, one, you may think, hey, that's just a short attack, like we weather the storm, we move on. I've seen it time and time again. DDoS attacks are rarely like a one and done. Not that someone's going to sit there and just keep peppering you with attacks, but there was a higher education institution I worked with 2 years back. They were attacked right before school started, brought down everything. We came in, we set up our services, we helped get them back online. 30 days later, about at the same time, same attack took place. They didn't feel any pain because we were there, but 30 days later, exact same time frame. 30 days after that, exact same time frame. Sometimes bad actors will set these up and put these in place and just have them reoccur over time to almost like probe your network, right? See what's going on there. So it's really important to think about that. Just because it's a short duration, it doesn't mean that it happens and it's gone forever. The second piece is, what do your defenses look like today? Obviously, that's a ton of traffic. If you don't have anything for DDoS, then you'd see an effect, of course. But if you have something, and many people, I'd say, past 10 years have adopted this idea of on-demand or reactive DDoS protection. This is one of those situations where you're probably not going to see much value there, because many of those solutions, they use observability, they see what's going on, and then the goal is, okay, we're going to shift BGP advertisements. We're gonna reroute traffic to maybe like a scrubbing center and get it in, and that can take a couple of minutes. So if the attack's only 45 seconds, and by the time your system detects something's happened, it takes a few minutes for the system to kick in. we're not really getting a lot of value there. So this is kind of one of the first, I'd say, cornerstones that are going to help drive the thought process around, how do we future proof? How do we start getting more proactive in that thought process around protecting from DDoS? I also thought, hey, 7.3 terabits per second sounds like a lot, but it's really hard for me to wrap my head around that and quantify what it is. So I thought this was kind of an interesting way to put it. Imagine you have someone in your network, and by some miracle of technology, in the period of 45 seconds, they streamed 7,500 hours on Netflix. Like that's how much data came into this network or came in via this attack within a 45-second period. And you see some of the other examples. So it's absurd to think about it. Obviously, this is an anomaly, right? This is the largest attack in history. And I want to be completely fair and transparent. Hyper-volumetric DDoS attacks do not make up the majority of attacks we see today. They're still a fraction of the total DDoS attack landscape that we see. But the piece that I think is really relevant and I wanted to spend some time on is when I was thinking about this, I thought, I keep hearing like largest DDoS attack every year, every quarter. I feel like I'm seeing a new largest DDoS attack in history. I wanted to take a step back and try to do some comparison to understand in my time at Cloudflare, how much is this growing? Like how much is it changing? Is it changing? So the first thing I thought was, let me look at, kind of the peak size of these attacks. And not pictured, but if we looked at the end of 2023, that number would be 2.6 terabits per second. So rough math, 2023 to 2024, it about doubled in size. 2024 to the end of 2025, we're not there yet, but if we keep the same trend, who knows? Maybe we see a 10 terabit per second attack by the end of the year. So these attacks continue to grow at just an unprecedented pace. It's really incredible. And if no other thing indicates it than the fact that 4 world records have happened in the past, not even a full year. So we're seeing these attacks just keep coming in larger and larger and larger. And a lot of times these attacks are really focused on, I'd say, like hosting providers, network operators, and Derek and I could both attest to, education and government are generally like higher on the list with those types of things, right? We're generally right in the middle of these types of attacks. But one more statistic for you, and then we'll move forward is, okay, so they're getting bigger, but how often are they happening? And again, like I mentioned, it's a fraction of the total number of attacks, but you can see how this has grown over time. And in this past quarter, don't ask me why, but massive uptick in these hypervolumetric attacks, from in the hundreds to 6,500 attacks this past quarter that were both 1 terabit per second in size, as well as over 1 billion packets per second. There's a lot of reasons that can be happening or could be happening. This is not the only reason, but I think it's just again, another trend over the past 5 years that's worth thinking about is what are bad actors using to facilitate these attacks? So when I started at Cloudflare, we were coming out of this like very prevalent time where bad actors might, let me think of a good example. Like let's say 200 million homes have a video doorbell, and a bad actor hacks that video doorbell, and they tell all 200 million doorbells, go hit Derek's network with traffic. Well, it's a lot of devices, but each device is pretty weak, right? They don't have a lot of resources, a lot of oomph to do much more than just send 200 million requests. So many bad actors have started to shift, and where are they shifting? They're shifting to public cloud and virtualized infrastructure, because it's very easy to go and say, I'm going to spin up an instance of compute with significant memory and RAM and CPU, and I want it to take some action, run some script, and it's going to be able to generate way more bandwidth and traffic than a little IoT device could ever do. And so it's more efficient because now instead of having to have 200 million devices, maybe I don't need, maybe I need thousands or hundreds or a little bit less than that. And very general, but just to kind of frame your mind around it. And again, admitting it's like a generalized statistic, but these VM-based botnets are roughly 5,000 times as powerful as the ones that you might see generated via IoT. So some of that likely lends itself to why we're seeing these attacks just boom and get so much larger here in recent times. So, what can you do to protect? And really, this is more framed at what we see organizations in the past, have tried to leverage as mechanisms to stop attacks. And I think the old tried and true option is we're going to have some piece of hardware in our facility that's going to stop DDoS attacks. And these devices have worked exceptionally well for a very long time. However, there are some challenges. And a lot of the challenges aren't as much focused on the hardware as it is just being hardware in general. So this landscape of attacks is ever changing. What is your process to get that device patched and up to date with the latest and greatest? The bigger issue, it really comes down to size. If these attacks are so massive, I mean, most organizations I talk to have 1 gig or maybe 10 gig, circuits into their networks. Obviously, a 7T attack is just magnitudes larger. It's going to saturate your network, saturate your link. Anything downstream of that is going to be rendered useless. So if we get such a large attack that box doesn't get a chance to really do anything, play ball, try to stop it, then it's not going to help. And so the thought process that I've seen many organizations start to think about is, okay, maybe having an on-prem hardware appliance is it's just a little too close to the crown jewels. It's on-prem. Like, can we push it upstream? Could we take it to our ISP? Could we take it out, to a cloud provider to try to stop this traffic before it ever touches, your link, your connection out to your transit provider? And there's a unfortunate truth about these types of providers, and that's that not every provider is created the same. Many DDoS providers leverage this mindset of scrubbing centers. So you will get pinned to a facility or a couple facilities that are going to stop these attacks. When you are leveraging the service, your traffic may have to hairpin to a location to have protections applied before it comes back. And inevitably, users are going to complain. When the service is on, they're like, hey, this is like everything's slow. What'd you do? Turn it back off, change it back. And I think this is really one of the main reasons so many organizations have been left in this thought process of I have to do DDoS in an on-demand model where I flip a switch to get protection and then turn it back off. And that's something we've really tried to challenge. And we'll talk about here in just a second. But the last point I'll leave you with is it is imperative that Cloudflare and these other providers are scaling their networks appropriately to meet the demand of these attacks. And I think this is really interesting and telling. The 7.3 terabit per second attack, there are a multitude of providers that we compete with and we talk to organizations about day in and day out that are already hitting about 50% bandwidth utilization, trying to block that one attack. The one thing we have done in my time at Cloudflare is quarter over quarter, we have continued to grow our networking capacity. We're at over 405 terabits per second now. Next quarter, it'll grow again. It'll grow again. Part of that is because of the size and scale of attacks. Part of that's just because we know, we're going to have new features, new solutions, more people coming to the network. But it's really important, I think, with these attacks being so large that you're thinking about not just, tomorrow, like, hey, what's the best product for this next year, but just thinking forward, right? Like if these attacks continue to grow at this rate, is that provider the right one to partner with long term for DDoS protection? So let's get into the meat of it. Why Cloudflare? Why is Cloudflare going to help future-proof your network and set you up for success? And the first thing I'd want you to think about is we want to act as a front door. And this is pretty true for almost all of our solutions and products. But anything coming to your network, we'd want Cloudflare to be that first, let's say, stop in their journey. And that's just meant as like a figurative stop. They're not going to stop in any capacity, but they should pass through Cloudflare first. It gives you a single consolidated view of all traffic, and it gives us the ability to take action in a proactive manner. So I want to take a second to talk about how this works and how it's unique. When organizations come to us and say, hey, we want to leverage Cloudflare for DDoS protection, the large majority use us in what I refer to as an always-on model. They provide a letter of authorization or an LOA with specific prefixes they want Cloudflare to advertise on their behalf. So we can advertise those attached to your ASN still out to the public internet. But one of the first very unique pieces is that we don't just advertise it from 1 or 2 or 3 facilities. If you remember back to the beginning, we will advertise it from every single Cloudflare point of presence we have around the globe today. And as we continue to scale the network, we'll keep doing that. And that's powerful because that means, again, back to the example, if someone from London is launching this attack, we don't have to wait for that traffic to, pull back somewhere, hairpin somewhere. We can stop it in London, right? Wherever the attacks come from, we can stop it there. Wherever your good users are coming from, we can basically have that traffic pass through us in line with them going up to their ISP. We are the most interconnected network in the world. And when we think about North America, especially, every major ISP all of the major cloud providers, a lot of large enterprises. We're sitting there, either directly connected or we have peering with those entities and co-locations all across the United States. So it really lends itself well for us to provide the service without any impact on performance. Once it hits our edge, a couple things happen. There's some services that take place. We call this service Magic Transit. So some of the magic I'll allude to quickly in a second, but I'd want you to think of it as it's hands off, right? You set it up at onboarding. We're monitoring for bad actors. We're stopping denial of service traffic or distributed denial of service traffic. You also have the ability to build some stateless firewall rules if you want to do things like block IPs or ports or countries, or use some managed threat intel lists we have to inform those policies. And then we have to get traffic back to you. So every customer is going to leverage what we call Anycache GRE. What we do is we set up a logical GRE tunnel from our edge to your edge router, but that tunnel maps to every single Cloudflare point of presence around the globe. So again, you're not pinned to a single location or a couple locations. This is what allows us to provide 100% uptime SLA and really allows us to have just supreme survivability as it pertains to other solutions in the market. So you can imagine if 1 or 10 Cloudflare point of presence went down, we're still advertising your IP space from every Cloudflare point of presence that's online. We're still able to get traffic back to you from every Cloudflare point of presence that's online. So again, that's what really fuels that 100% uptime SLA we have. If we're sitting in the same colocation, or if you're using a fabric provider like a Equinix, maybe like a Megaport, then there's also sometimes opportunity for us to do a network interconnect. So we could run a physical or virtual cross connect between our edge and yours, where we can directly hand off traffic to you. So think of it as like a preferred lowest latency path for us to get traffic back to you. And then if it were ever down, because it's finite and there's probably only a couple of those connections we're going to put in place, we can fall back to those Anycache GRE tunnels. Now we're getting close on time, so just real quick here. If you're interested, if this sounds like something you want to dig deeper into, I just want to go ahead and mention now, I'm going to have my contact info at the end. Please, let Caresoft know, or let me and Derek know. We'd love to sit down and dig in deeper to what you're doing today. But with this solution, there are a multitude of systems, from decentralized systems that can actually stop traffic in less than 3 seconds at every single Cloudflare point of presence, to, of course, the ability for us to do things like sampling and do TCP state tracking. But all of those systems are, again, they're hands off. They're set up at implementation, they're monitoring your traffic, and they're taking action on your behalf. You can configure, you can make changes to them, but it's intended to be something that you set up and get value from without having to come in and necessarily manipulate it every single day. Last thing I'll quickly allude to is just a common pain point I hear is, we have protection today. The only maybe qualm we have with it is we can't see what's going on. We're putting a lot of faith in someone to deliver that protection. And we've really taken that to heart. I think a lot of the analytics and observability we've built into the platform is intended to be kind of a one-stop shop for network operators. I see a lot of organizations that, maybe keep up our analytics on like a knock on a monitor. They have it set to refresh, so it's showing them relevant updates. But any traffic that's allowed through or blocked, you get full visibility to help you understand why did we block it, what kind of attack was it, where did it come from, so the country, the network, the IP, real good information to help not only give you insights in Cloudflare, but to probably inform security decisions that might be taking place outside of Cloudflare. Last thing, just want to tie it all back to the beginning, that mission of building a better internet. One of the things we do, and we kind of pride ourselves on, especially for state, local government, and education customers, is if you run into a situation where something happens, you're getting attacked and you need help, please feel free to reach out. We are absolutely of the mindset that we will help you get protected, help you stop the attack, and then we can talk about pricing, procurement, if that makes sense as a part 2 to it. There's no obligation. It's meant to be us coming to help you get protections in place in a time of need. So just I'd encourage you to flag it. If you go to cloudflare.com, there's a button in the top right corner. It'll get you in touch with us at any time. With that, I think I'm through my content. So does the team or does anyone on the line have any questions for us?
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions in chat, Tony. The first one would be, is it possible for Cloudflare solution to be on demand, or is it only always on, like what you were talking about?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we can do both, right? I think most organizations use us always on because, again, like less than 3 second time to mitigate. You're getting the value of not having to swing traffic. It's just sitting there ready to go. But I'd be lying to you if I didn't say some organizations still want to keep an on-demand model. So that can be triggered via API. That can be triggered via route reflectors. So you can set up a BGP peering session with us and tell us what you want us to advertise, when we should advertise it. So definitely a possibility.
Another one is there any minimums for like the IP prefixes that you need to be able to like bring to use this?
So that's no, I guess is kind of the short answer. No, but there are some considerations. So if you have a /24 or greater, then you can basically sign over an LOA like we talked about earlier. We'll advertise the IP space on your behalf. Sometimes organizations, they might be like leasing a single IP or a couple IPs from an ISP. What happens in that situation is we can still offer the service, but you will end up leasing an IP from Cloudflare. So imagine you get an IP from Cloudflare that you will need to, re-IP your, public internet facing systems that we're using the other IP with. And then we will not only ingress traffic to you, but also egress that traffic back out through Cloudflare. So absolutely a possibility. And those types of, I'd say if there's a situation like that, or your organization that's thinking about it and you're in that situation, those are great opportunities for us to dig in, get engineering on the line with you to look at your architecture and help paint the picture of what exactly that could look like. All right. Well, with that, I'm going to pass back over to Anna.
Thank you both. I want to thank all of our participants as well as our speakers for being with us today. We hope our webinar has been helpful for you and your organization. If you have any further questions or would like to request more information, please feel free to contact us. Our contact information is displayed on your screen, so please don't hesitate to call or email. Thank you again for attending.